Welcome back to my channel. It's time for another episode of From The Anvil, where I ask West Ham fans a question on a recent topic and get their thoughts. This week's topic was regarding Jarrod Bowen's recent performances. He's been excellent since he joined the club in January, and over the last few games he's been one of West Ham's best players. He's been contributing a hell of a lot in the attack. He's been hard-working, and he's putting a lot of big earning players and a lot of big transfer fee-esque players to shame. And I'll get onto some of those in this video. I asked the question on Facebook groups, the fans responded, I took ones that caught my eye, and now I'm going to give my thoughts. So far so good. Needs to be up front with service. He was unlucky to hit the post at Spuds, but he had a go. Definitely had a go. He was probably one of West Ham's better players on the day. He had two really good chances, hitting the post, and then he had a cross, well, it was a half cross, half shot that Rice saved. He put in some graft and was unlucky not to score. He's only had one goal so far for West Ham, and I think he definitely could add a few more. He needs to be up front with service. He did have service. He was up front with same line as Antonio and Fornals. And Antonio didn't have any firepower, and Fornals missed a very good chance. So he did have service, but they didn't capitalise on anything. Imagine having him in an attacking side rather than always having to cover for our poor fullbacks. I noticed that against Wolves in particular, he was defending and attacking at the same time. He was having to track back, get the ball away from the Wolves players, and then go back the other way. He basically is doing the job of Cresswell and Fredericks, or whoever the starting right back is. And that is not good, really. Cresswell is not doing his job enough if Bowen's having to go back and clear the ball and mark a winger. Having said that, it shows that Bowen's willing to fight and willing to put his body on the line for the team. He's willing to go in and make the tackle and get rid of the ball if it means stopping West Ham from conceding a goal, which is a good sign. And I'm not saying that it's bad that he's doing that, but at the same time, his defenders should be helping out. Bowen can't just run the show. He can't do everything. I'm impressed with him. A very decent buy. Shame those around him don't share his work ethic. If anyone has good work ethic, it's Declan Rice and Jarrod Bowen. Both of them clearly care about the club. And not only that, they put in 110% every single game. West Ham would be 20th if it wasn't for Declan Rice. He does everything from defending, holding up the line, to attacking. Especially against Spurs. He was providing crosses a lot. Long crosses from one box to the other. He was also getting back and clearing balls. Declan Rice has put in a lot of graft. And if he were to leave West Ham, he'd be a really big loss. Relegation to Championship would probably mean that Declan Rice would leave and go to a bigger club. And that's the harsh reality of that. Hard working don't win games, we need goals. Ultimately, goals are going to win you games. You don't score, you don't have a good chance of winning. I mean, I don't care who scores as long as someone for West Ham actually does it and it helps us to win a game. Bowen had 16 goals in 29 games for Hull prior to him joining West Ham, and since he joined West Ham, he's had 1 in 6. I'm hoping he adds to his tally, but that might just be because Championship was a bit less intense than the Premier League. So the Premier League is going to be a real test for Bowen. Other thing is, it's obviously a team effort. It's not just one or two players. It can't just be Rice or Bowen or Fabianski. It's got to be everybody getting together. And that's going to be very important, especially because time's running out. Has been up for it from day one. More than could be said for any of our more expensive signings. More expensive signings is i.e. Felipe Anderson, who was offered nothing of real quality this season. He had 8 goals in his first 19 games for West Ham, but in the 2019-20 season, Anderson's just been pretty much non-existent. Bowen's been at West Ham for only a few months, and he's showing more about him than a £45 million player. Some people might say that Allaire is a waste of money, but 1, he's injured right now, and 2, I don't think he's really played to his strengths. Also a big risk in signing Allaire because we didn't know what he would be like in the Premier League. He'd never had Premier League experience before, but he did have one of the best striker partnerships in the Bundesliga when he had Luka Jovic with him at Eintracht Frankfurt. So I think that's why Pellegrini and Huselos wanted to sign Allaire. What I would say, just to get back onto the question, is that Bowen has definitely been up for it from day one. I think that's part of the being hungry to play in the Premier League, because a lot of players, particularly in lower leagues in England and across Europe as well, have that dream of playing in the Premier League, cliche as that sounds, and Bowen wants to make the most of that opportunity. So I think that internal hunger and that drive makes him want to do things and makes him want to excel. Brilliant player. Why he joined us, I do not know. Well, there were one of 3 clubs that could have signed Jarrod Bowen in January, and it was either Newcastle, Crystal Palace or West Ham, and it went right down to the wire on deadline day. If you remember, there was a lot of stress on Twitter. Is Bowen going to sign for us or not? Are we going to get the deal over the line? Everyone was praying that ex-West Ham United employee would tweet good news, and he eventually did. But leading up to that, it was stressful. I remember it. I was at work that day and I was checking like every hour or so if Jarrod Bowen had signed. Little ups, little bit of downs. Finally got off my shift to see the tweet saying he signed West Ham. And I said, oh, thank you. Finally we got the player we need. He was possibly going to go to Newcastle, and Crystal Palace on the deadline day of January put in that bid for him, but he rejected Palace. West Ham then hijacked the bid with around 17 million, I believe it was, and went in for Jarrod. And he had his medical in Yorkshire, came down to London, and was eventually signed at about 11 p.m. at night. I think he was at the stadium till like 2 a.m. in the morning doing the interviews and all the promos, but that's just what deadline day is all about. Why he joined us, I do not know. Like I've said before, it was the chance to play in the Premier League, and because West Ham needed another attacking player. Bowen is a triple threat. He can play as striker, attacking mid, or winger. So having that versatility and that ability to change his roles was needed. What I would say, though, is that since Hull got rid of him, they've struggled. I think they're in the relegation zone of the Championship right now, because that January was a bad one for Hull. They lost Kamil Grosicki to West Brom, and they also then lost Bowen, so they lost their 2 biggest attackers. Very good in my opinion. Him and Rice, top players at the Spuds. Yeah, absolutely agree. They're the only 2 players that I had a lot of praise for in that whole game, because they didn't put a foot wrong. I also rate Souček, though his restart has been a bit rougher. Souček is a very good player. He's got great stamina and great defensive and midfield capabilities. He's also been the captain of Slavia Prague. He's won 2 Czech First League titles there, and he won the Czech Player of the Year in 2019. What I will say with Souček is he has had a bit of a rough restart. I think that's partly because of the own goal against Spurs, but what I would say to him is very simply, don't let that get you down and just move on. Because he's been great since he joined us. He's been a really big part of that midfield. Solid tackler, solid tracker of players. He also had a pretty decent goal record. He had 8 goals in 17 games prior to him joining West Ham. If West Ham stay up, they have the option to sign him for 13 million, and they should totally do that. Because I like him. He's a good player. And although he's made one little mistake, I still rate him very highly. Okay, so having read all of those comments, I'm going to give my thoughts. I think Bowen has the potential to be a big difference maker for West Ham, and he's clearly shown that in the game against Southampton where we won 3-1. He got the opening goal in that game, cutting him from behind and putting Pablo Fornal's cross into net. And he has a major role within the first team, I think. His goal-scoring stats for Hull City were very impressive. He was 2-time player of the season for Hull. And don't forget, in 29 games he had 16 goals. He also has drawn comparisons to Arjen Robben, which is very, very good comparison to have. He was one of the best wingers in the world at one point. And also Bowen is very free to play wherever in the attack. What I would say about him, though, is that he is not a one-man team, as we know. He can't do everything. However, he does do a lot of things, which is good on his part, but bad on other players. Bowen should be an attacker. He shouldn't have to trap back and defend because his left-back or centre-backs can't do it. He shouldn't be having to hold at the line because his midfield can't do it. He should be able to use the space, like he did against Spurs, cut in and have a shot on target. And he was very unfortunate to hit the post in that game. There's a lot of potential in this young lad. He's only 23 years old, and I think he'd have a very bright future at West Ham. What I will say as well is that he's got a lot still to prove. He has 1 goal in 6 games. I think he could get so many more. But in terms of first impressions, he's making a really good one. So yeah, it's very pleasing to have him at the club, and he's definitely playing a big role. Thank you very much for tuning into this episode of From The Anvil. If you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all soon.